Have you ever really stopped and thought about where your food comes from? I mean, really thought about the incredible journey it takes to get to your plate. It's so easy to just take it for granted, right? But behind every single bite, there's a massive story of science, strategy, and just plain old human ingenuity. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that journey and explore one of the biggest challenges on the planet. How do we produce enough food for everyone?
So let's just jump right into the big question, shall we? For a country like India, with a population that's well over 1 billion people, how do you even begin to solve the puzzle of feeding everyone every single day? The sheer scale of this challenge, it's just staggering.
To try and wrap your head around that scale, just look at this number. Over 250 million tons of grain every single year. That is an almost unbelievable amount. To put that into perspective, imagine the largest cricket stadium in the world, packed to the brim with grain. You'd have to do that hundreds and hundreds of times over, year after year, just to meet our basic needs. Wow.
Now, here's the real catch. We can't just make more land, can we? The amount of land we have is finite, so the only way forward isn't to expand outwards, but to improve upwards. We have to get smarter. We have to squeeze more out of every single resource we have. The name of the game is efficiency. In our crops, in our livestock, in literally everything we do.
So, how are we going to tackle this massive puzzle? Well, we'll break it down piece by piece. First up, we'll really get a handle on the problem itself. Then, we'll dive into the solutions, starting right from the seed, improving our crop varieties, and then moving out to the farm, managing how we produce them. After that, we'll explore the super important role of animals before finally seeing how all these pieces fit together to build a truly secure food future. Ready? Let's go.
All right, let's start by laying the groundwork. To really understand food production in India, you first have to get the rhythm of our agricultural clock, which is pretty much set by the monsoons. So we basically have two main growing seasons. The Kharif season starts with the monsoon rains in June. These are the thirsty crops, like rice and soybean that absolutely depend on all that rain. Then, as winter rolls in, we have the Rabi season. Crops like wheat and chana are sown in November, and they rely more on irrigation and moisture that's already in the ground. And here's a cool little fact. These names actually come from Arabic. Kharif means autumn for the harvest, and Rabi means spring. A little bit of history right there in our fields. You can think of our farmland as basically preparing a giant balanced meal for the entire country. The cereals, the rice and wheat for our rotis and idlis, they give us carbs for pure energy. The pulses, our dals, they provide the essential protein for growth. Oil seeds give us the fats we need, and of course, fruits and vegetables are packed with all those vital vitamins and minerals. We even grow specific fodder crops, which are pretty much a dedicated meal service for our farm animals. Okay, so now we know the basics of what we grow. Let's get into the first big strategy for boosting our efficiency, making the plants themselves fundamentally better. This is where science steps in to design the super plants of the future. So the main tool in the toolbox for this is a process called hybridization. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like selective matchmaking for plants. Imagine a scientist sees one plant that produces tons of grain but gets sick all the time, and another one that's really tough and disease-resistant but doesn't yield much. The goal of crossbreeding them is to create a new hybrid kid that gets the best of both worlds, a high yield and great disease resistance.
Now, this plant matchmaking can happen at a few different levels. Think of it like this. Intervarietal crossing is kind of like breeding two different types of dogs, say a German Shepherd and a Labrador. They're different varieties, but they're both still dogs. Interspecific is a bit trickier, like crossing a horse and a donkey to get a mule. They're related, but they're different species. And intergenetic, that's the most ambitious of all, trying to crossbreed plants from totally different families. It's super difficult, but it opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
A more modern and way more direct approach is genetic modification. So if hybridization is like matchmaking, creating a GMO is like precision genetic surgery. Here, scientists pinpoint the exact gene for a specific trait, like drought resistance or higher nutritional value, and they insert it directly into a plant's DNA. The most famous example is probably golden rice, where a gene for producing a precursor to vitamin A was added to help fight nutritional deficiencies in kids. Pretty amazing stuff.
So let's pause for a second. When scientists are in the lab, what are they actually trying to achieve? What does a better crop really mean? Just think about it. If you were a farmer dealing with unpredictable weather, pests, and rising costs, what would your dream crop be like? What would be on your ultimate wish list?
Well, here's that scientific wish list. Higher yield is number one, obviously. More food from the same amount of land. Improve quality is a big one, like getting more protein in our dals. Then there's resistance. A simple way to remember this: bio means life. So biotic threats are living things like insects and diseases. Abiotic threats are the non-living stresses like drought, heat, or salty soil. A shorter maturity time is huge. It could mean a farmer gets 2 harvests a year instead of 1. And that last one, agronomic traits, is super interesting. Take dwarfness in cereals. A shorter, sturdier plant wastes less energy growing a long stalk and puts all that energy where we want it, into making more grain. That one trait was a huge part of the Green Revolution.
Okay, so we've designed a better seed. That's awesome, but that's only half the battle. Having the best seed in the world is useless if you plant it in bad soil with no water. So now we need to talk about managing how we grow it, the smart farming practices that make all the difference on the ground.
And this is such a crucial point. The genetic potential of a seed is just that, potential. To actually unlock it, the way you manage the crop from the moment that seed goes into the ground to the day you harvest it is every bit as critical. It's a real partnership between nature and nurture.
One of the smartest management tools a farmer has is choosing the right cropping pattern, and each one solves a different problem. If your biggest worry is a total crop failure, you might use mixed cropping. It's like agricultural insurance. If the wheat fails, maybe the gram survives. If you want to use every last bit of your land and its nutrients super efficiently, you'd use intercropping with its neat rows. And if you're thinking about the long-term health of your soil, crop rotation is the absolute key. By planting a legume, you're basically using a plant to create natural fertilizer for the next crop. How smart is that?
Now let's talk about plant food. Because just like us, plants need a balanced diet to be healthy. They need their main meals, the macronutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and they need a lot of them. But just like we need small amounts of vitamins to stay healthy, plants need their micronutrients, like iron and boron, in tiny, tiny amounts. Without them, the whole system just doesn't work right. So how do we give plants these nutrients? Well, this slide shows the 2 main options, and it really highlights a classic dilemma that farmers face every day. On one side, you have organic manure. It's a slow-release, long-term investment that builds healthy soil by adding this rich organic matter called humus. On the other side, you've got chemical fertilizers. They're like a quick shot of energy, fast-acting, powerful, but they do absolutely nothing for the soil's long-term health and can even damage it over time. This choice between long-term sustainability and short-term results is one of the biggest debates in farming today.
In a country where the monsoon is both a blessing and a curse, managing water is everything. Irrigation is basically our way of taking control, of making sure our crops get a drink even when the skies are dry. And we have a whole bunch of ways to do it, from traditional dug wells to modern tube wells and massive networks of canals that act like water highways across the country.
So after all that work of planting and watering and feeding, you'd think the job is done, right? Nope, the battle isn't over. A farmer then has to become a guardian, protecting the harvest from a whole trio of threats. First, you've got the weeds, these sneaky rivals that try to steal the crop's food and water. Then come the pests, the insect invaders that can literally eat away at a farmer's profit. And finally, you have the invisible enemies, diseases caused by tiny pathogens that can wipe out an entire field. It's a constant fight.
So far, we've focused pretty much entirely on what grows from the ground, but that's only one side of the food story. Now, let's switch gears and talk about animal husbandry, the other major pillar of our food system that gives us things like milk, meat, and eggs. Let's start with cattle and poultry. In India, cattle farming has traditionally served 2 very distinct purposes. We have our milch breeds, which are basically our milk specialists. This includes amazing local breeds like the Gur and Sahiwal, and high-yielding foreign breeds like the Jersey cow. And on the other hand, we have draft breeds. These are the workhorses of the farm, valued not for their milk, but for their pure strength in plowing fields and pulling carts. Poultry farming has a very similar kind of specialization. Broilers are the chickens raised for meat. Their whole life is basically a sprint, to grow, reaching their market size in just 6 to 8 weeks on a special high-protein diet. Layers, on the other hand, as you can probably guess, are raised for laying eggs. Their job isn't a sprint, it's a marathon, focused on long-term, steady egg production under very carefully managed conditions. Beyond the large farm animals, our food system also relies on some smaller but no less important creatures. So let's dive into the world of fisheries and the totally fascinating practice of beekeeping.
When it comes to getting fish on our plates, we have 2 completely different strategies. Capture fishing is all about being a hunter, going out into the wild oceans and rivers with boats and nets to catch whatever fish you can. But culture fishing, which is better known as aquaculture, is all about being a farmer. It's the practice of actually raising fish in controlled places like ponds, just like a farmer raises crops in a field.
And this is where fish farming gets really, really clever. One of the most efficient methods is called composite fish culture. It's an absolutely brilliant system where you raise 5 or 6 different types of fish all together in the same pond. And the secret sauce is that they don't fight over food because they are picked specifically for their different eating habits.
And here's exactly how this system works. It's like a perfectly organized apartment building. You have a species like Katla that hangs out and feeds near the surface. Rohu takes the middle zone. Down at the bottom, you have Mergle and common carp, who are like the cleanup crew. You can even throw in a grass carp to act as a natural weed eater. The result? Absolutely no food is wasted, every part of the pond is used, and you get a much bigger fish harvest from that one pond. Genius!
All right, now let's zoom in from these large ponds to some of the smallest yet most important workers on any farm: bees. Beekeeping, also known as apiculture, is way more than just a hobby. It's a serious agricultural business for producing 2 really valuable things: honey and beeswax.
Now, while India has its own awesome native bees, for commercial farming, the Italian bee, Apis mellifera, is often the star player. And if you look at its resume, you can see why a beekeeper would want to hire it. It's a champion honey collector, it's pretty gentle and doesn't sting much, it's a homebody that doesn't tend to abandon the hive, and it breeds really well. It's basically the perfect employee for a honey farm.
But, even the best bees in the world are totally useless without one critical thing: pasturage. Pasturage is just the fancy word for the variety and amount of flowers that are available for the bees to collect nectar and pollen from. The quality of the pasturage directly determines how much honey the bees can make. And not just that, the type of flowers gives the honey its unique flavor. That's exactly why honey from mustard flowers in Rajasthan tastes completely different from honey from lychee flowers in Bihar. The bees are literally bottling the flavor of the local landscape.
So, we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? We've talked about better seeds, smarter farming, raising animals. In this final section, let's bring all these ideas together under the most important concept of all: achieving sustainable food security for the long, long term.
This quote right here really hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures the central challenge of our time. It's not good enough to just produce more food at any cost. We absolutely have to do it in a way that doesn't poison our water, destroy our soil, or mess up the ability of our kids and grandkids to feed themselves. This is the tightrope we all have to walk, feeding everyone today without stealing from tomorrow.
And you know what? When we do manage to apply science and smart management successfully, the results can be truly revolutionary. India's own history shows this so clearly. We've had these incredible transformations. The Green Revolution made us self-sufficient in food grains. The White Revolution basically flooded the country with milk. And the Blue and Yellow Revolutions did the same for fish and oilseeds. Each one was a massive leap forward in our food journey.
And that brings us to the big, final takeaway from all of this. Real food security has 2 essential parts. First is availability. We have to produce enough food for everyone, using all the smart, efficient, and sustainable methods we've talked about. But the second part is just as critical: access. People also need to have the money and the ability to actually get that food. You need both availability and access for a country to be truly food secure.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. We've seen the revolutions of the past, the ones built on chemistry and genetics. But as we face the new and incredibly complex challenges of climate change, dwindling water, and a population that's still growing, what will the next great agricultural revolution look like? The answers to that question are going to define our future. Thanks for joining me on this journey.